Hello, everyone. Bonsoir, mes amis. I hope you're having a very good Tuesday. I almost said Wednesday. See, I need to get with the program because obviously we are not 100% sure what is happening because we changed the time to Tuesdays through Thursdays. So, welcome. I know you're not used to seeing me on Tuesdays, but we're going to have fun. Same pace. I have a lot planned today. We are going to get into the electric drill and the harvesting machine, agriculture. Think of that kind of stuff. And we are also going to be getting into a couple of things with the telephone and how the automatic switch was made such a big difference. New chat box. Yes, new chat box. I had to change everything. Welcome. And thanks for typing that in there. I think I set up the settings just well enough that I can hear you, that I can see you, but it's giving me a run for my money. But without much further ado, let's play the video. Let's get going. Let's do something a little bit of fun to get our blood pumping. And today, again, we're going to be getting into the automatic switch for the telephone first. So we're going to play a video and kind of show you something a bit fun, something a bit snappy. And then we're going to get into how that came about, why it's so important, and how it was so revolutionary and impacted our entire world. So here goes the video. But while the video is playing, I'm gonna talk over here because you get the idea. They even have a song playing overhead, which it's cute, but you get the idea. We had call girls. We had a lot of people, women primarily, monitoring these different things, specifically connecting people to each other, and you just see they're going about doing their thing and how hectic it can be sometimes, and how what they needed to do to connect each call. And when we would get the automatic telephone switch, they would all go away. And of course, they would pursue other things, but you get the idea. Also, this is more Marvelous Mrs. Mabel, by the way. Cute thing. If you're a girl, I think you would like this kind of show. But if you're not, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Probably wouldn't be your kind of show. But you guys, I am moving along. We are moving quickly because we have a lot of material to get into. And also, I'm excited to show you, you know, what I kind of been doing in the background and some changes that I've made to the podcast slash stream, makes us like have to move quickly and move along and get a lot done. But you get the idea. Yes, it was a very cool technology to have the telephone at that time. However, privacy was not the best. It really wasn't. It seems like we've gone full circle, isn't it? That when we first got the Stroger automatic telephone switch, it was to gain privacy. And it seems now we are so far in advance with technology that a motivated enough person can get any and all information. So for me, my motto is I try not to make people mad, okay? I try to lead a good life and I slide under the radar. That's how I get through life because I don't have the energy to deal with it all. With people trying to get into things, I don't have the energy for that. I really don't. But I know, look at this. We even changed the framing of everything. So many new changes. What do you guys think? Drop it down below. Let me know what you're thinking, what's new. But in the meantime, we're going to start the reading so we can get into this and make some magic happen. And I would like some credit, okay? As usual, I remembered to bring water, okay? Like a 5-year-old kid, I need credit. I need encouragement. But enough joking aside. with me forgetting to hydrating myself. Let's get into the automatic electric candlestick telephone. It would be difficult to exaggerate the social and economic impact of the telephone after its commercialization in the last quarter of the late 19th century. However, fixed line telephony didn't achieve its full potential until the invention of the Strowger stepping switch, which made automatic dialing impossible. With these changes, rotary dial telephones became the standard. One of the features of the late 19th century was the incidence of acrimonious patent litigation, especially around key media and communication inventions. These disputes, which sometimes continued for decades, demonstrated how difficult it was to decide on the originality of an invention that was manufactured from existent components and based on establishing theoretical principles that often led to the development of similar devices. Simultaneously, it also highlighted the huge financial gains to be made from being the first to commercialize certain innovations. The inventions of the first line telephones is probably the most contested patent of the period, and arguments about who invented the phone can still trigger supporters on different sides. As soon as the first commercially wired telegraph entered service in the UK in 1839, transmitting Morse code, inventors began to work on how to transmit the human voice over its wired connections. Two main patent contenders for the telephone in the US are, of course, Alexander Graham Bell and Elisha Gray. Both Bell's patent and Gray's caveat were filed on the same day, just a few hours apart. There were accusations of theft and patent fraud, as well as conspiracy theories to explain why Bell eventually won out over Gray. However, as seems usual in these disputes, the person who succeeded was also the first to have a workable device that could be taken to market. At first, telephone lines were installed on an individual basis, connecting two subscribers directly without any intervening exchange. To make a call, one party whistled down the phone line until the other party picked up the phone. This state of affairs, had it continued for any time, could have meant that our cities would have been covered in a dense net of telephone wires. You may have seen an early exchange in an old movie or a period drama. They operated very simply. The caller first contacted the operator, who replied, "Number, please." The operator established a connection with pairs of jack cords that she plugged into manually into a switchboard panel. The system worked fine when there were a few subscribers, but as soon as the number of telephone lines increased, it became clear that a more rapid and efficient means of connecting phone users was required. Ultimately, this would mean automation. The story goes that in the late 1880s, Almond Strowger, a Kansas City funeral director, became convinced that a rival firm was stealing his business because the owner's wife, who was a local telephone operator, was redirecting his calls to her husband. This spurred him to make a device, the automatic dialing system, that would do away with the need for a human operator. He designed what would later become known as the Strowger switch, the basis of the first automated telephone exchanges, and introduced the rotary dial telephone that remained in use for 8 decades. When he opened his first exchange in La Porte, Indiana, in 1892 with 75 subscribers, he reportedly boasted that his automatic electric exchanges would be girl less, cuss less, out of order less, and weight less. The telegraph provided the first mass telecommunication system, but it had several limitations. It was text only. Messages were expensive and kept short, and they were not private. The messages had to go through an operator who received the Morse code and transcribed them for delivery. Until the invention of the Strowger switch, a telephone also suffered from the latter drawback, as there was always the risk that the operator was listening to a private conversation. The fear that his business was being sabotaged was what had driven Strowger to come up with the idea of the automated exchange. And the privacy of the system was undoubtedly a major selling point for business users. With this new technology, users could speak to their customers with confidence and at a much greater length than with the telegraph. The introduction of automation also increased the speed of the telephone, which was another advantage for commercial users. But perhaps the greatest impact was on social relationships. The telegraph was too expensive to use in anything but an emergency. The only other means for family and friends to stay in touch was by mail. The telephone provided an immediacy and intimacy that began all forms of social networks as we know it today. An immediacy and intimacy as we know it today. I would have to agree with the author a little bit on that. That, you know, an immediacy and intimacy is brought to us with the automatic switch. However, I'm certain you can think of all the ways that it has driven us apart as well. But to me, what's most fascinating about the automatic switch and how it came about is just it's the typical stories. It's always the typical stories. Well, you know, competition, his wife was stealing the competition, so he had to go ahead and make his own thing because he was losing money. It's just so funny how it always starts. But I think it's really awesome that later on, what it would end up going to would be a major company, and he would end up making like a lot more money than what he had been doing with his just funeral, you know, business. It's just a small change, but it put him in a different field, and it changed everything for him. Almond Brown Stroger over here. I want to show you a picture. And let's see. This is the first candlestick phone. That's kind of cute, you guys. I think I want one of those. Actually, my little brother is like really into antique stuff. And he had one of those like dial phones, or he may still have it. But he has like one of those dial phones that's like, it's the one that you put on the desk. It's not a candlestick, it's like a sitting one. If you guys are old enough, you'll remember. But it wired, it has a rotary thing, and I remember as kids, like, we would play with it and like try to get our number perfectly done. And the way that it works, like, you have to like turn it all the way, and you have to like click the little metal part. If you see the metal part right around here, like, it has to like touch the number. You have to put your finger in it, and you have to go all the way around. And if you miss one number, then that's it. You have to start all over again. So it's kind of funny to see what was and what is today. But you know, it's kind of cool also that my childhood is so weird that I came across one of these things because my little brother is like really into these antique stuff. This one over here is the original Stroger little, switch, the automatic switch in making the connection without an operator. It's like the original prototype, the first thing that came to being. And of course, as time goes on, they would improve it and make it better and all that jazz. In the beginning, I showed you this video about the ladies plugging everything and moving back and forth, and it's really well done. Um, I really like the way that they do it. I think it makes sense. Of course, it's a little bit exaggerated. It's a movie, it's a TV show, it has to be. But look at these real pictures of all these wires and all these different places that they're connecting them to. You can imagine, like, it's very easy to get that messed up and accidentally get overwhelmed or plug something in the wrong thing, and all of a sudden you just got chaos. It seems like it would take very short period of time until you would get chaos. But that looks super duper cool. And more pictures down here, and then again, more of the system, the Stroger stepping switch over here. It makes me ponder, how did this man come about with this new machine if he himself wasn't an expert in that realm? It makes me think, because he's a funeral director kind of person. That's his job. Like, how did he acquire all the knowledge to make such a machine? It looks so complicated to me. And these are all things that we're thinking about and questioning and putting out there, because at the end, around 7:45-ish, I want to take the last 10 minutes for us to discuss, for me to get some ideas of what you're thinking of, and, see what you think of all of these things that I'm throwing at you. We got to keep moving. So let's go on to the next reading. And we're going to get hit on the vacuum, you guys. The vacuum, I couldn't find a video for that one. But The last one will be the best. It'll be really, really fun. But the vacuum is an interesting one and how it came about. And what's even more interesting is the person who designed and invented the vacuum is not the person who made it successful. I know. If you can think of Sherlock Holmes, for example, how he is very good detective and just brilliant at what he does. But the man can't keep his life straight, and without Watson, he basically can't get anything done. He's so good and he's so set in his ways that he's unable to capitalize on his gifts and really, like, you would think Sherlock, if he didn't have his proclivities, he would have been able to like make a whole agency and be a genius and make so much money. Because he could have so many people working under him and he could just come up to their case and look at it and be like, this needs to change, this needs to change, and like make be so successful. Well, in this case for the vacuum, it's kind of the same thing. You have a genius, a person who's really good at inventing, but they suck at business. They simply suck at business. And because of that, their name is not the name that is known. It is a person who acquired the patent and marketed it and funded it is the person who became known, who has, their name as what the Hoover is known. It's interesting. It's also interesting. So Hoover in Britain, why they say Hoover is because the person who made it into such a success, his last name is Hoover, William Hoover. So a lot happening over here. And I'm really fascinated by this story because of how it works out and how it came about. So let's get into the reading for this one. And let me make sure I have everything put up correctly and in the right modes. There we go. And then we will be able to talk about this and get through this. Let's see. La da 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 da. There we go. The Hoover suction sweeper, the first upright electric vacuum cleaner, was one of the many labor-saving devices that began to transform the life of women in the first decades of the 20th century. A slow seller at first, the sweeper was marketed with one of the first home trial offers. The Hoover story is a heartwarming tale, although more of a small town business to multinational corporation rather than a rags to riches kind of story. It can be held up as an example of the American dream. The person who realized the dream was not the inventor of the world's first electric upright vacuum cleaner, James Murray Spangler, but his financial backer. The dream was realized by his business associate and cousin by marriage, William H. Hoover. That's why in Britain the name Hoover and vacuum are used interchangeably. We don't Spangler the carpet, but we Hoover it. According to the Hoover website, Spangler worked as a janitor in Canton, Ohio. This is true, but it fails to mention that he was an inventor with several patents for agricultural machinery to his name. Unfortunately, he was not a good businessman, and he never managed to strike rich from his inventions. Hence, in his late 50s and suffering from asthma, he was working as a janitor at the Zollinger department store. Because sweeping the store's carpet made his symptoms worse, he decided to make an electric sweeper that would suck the choking dust into a bag. Starting with a manual rotary sweeper, he added a sewing machine motor and leather belt to turn the sweeper brush and power a fan that blew the dust into a pillowcase. In 1907, having established the principle, he improved on the design, applied for a patent which was awarded in 1908, and established the Electric Suction Sweeper Company. Unfortunately, Spangler's lack of business acumen let him down once more. He did not have the funds to mass produce the sweeper. He demonstrated the machine to his cousin Susan Hoover, who was so impressed that she told her husband about it. William Hoover owned a horse harness store in North Canton, but with the growing popularity of the automobile threatening his business, he was looking to diversify. He bought into Spangler's patent and invested in his company, which later took its new owner's name. Spangler continued to work for Hoover and to improve his invention, but he died suddenly in 1915. Although the suction sweeper was superior to its competitors, because, as the advertising slogan proudly boasted, it beats as it sweeps as it cleans. Early sales were slow, but Hoover hit on the idea of a free 10-day home trial in which the customer only had to pay to return the sweeper if not completely satisfied. The marketing ploy worked, and within the next decade, Hoover had established itself as a leading global brand. Hoover was fortunate that he was marketing a labor saving device for the home, just at the time when the role of women in society was beginning to transform. Labor shortages during the First World War had forced many women to go to work, and social trends such as female emancipation and the appearance of alternative employment to domestic service made the vacuum cleaner extremely attractive to homemakers of the 1920s. Although promoted in periods as this little machine, the Hoover Model Zero was a 40-pound or 18-kilogram monster that must have given its operators a great workout. However, compared to the alternative, sweeping carpets by hand or hanging them outdoors to beat them, the suction sweeper must have looked like a marvel. And compared to earlier powered vacuum cleaners, which were mounted on horse drawn wagons, they were amazingly compact. Spangler's original design for the upright suction sweeper, although it got smaller, lighter, and more powerful, remained largely unchanged right until the development of bag-free vacuums in the 20th century. A brush at the front of the machine turned and later beat, dislodging the dirt from the carpet, and a fan powered by an electrical motor sucked it into a bag. Wow. I would take that over the alternative that back then, if they needed to clean the carpet, what they had to do was to hang it outside to dry, and then on top of that, beat it. They had to just beat it with a machine and hope that it worked. That is crazy. That is totally crazy to me. like and again, I remember seeing it in movies, like these old movies that I grew up watching or TV shows. If you know this, you are old person, and I love that because I'm an old soul. But Scarecrow and Mrs. King, the image that was going through my mind when I was talking about the Hoover or the carpet being hung out to dry and then beat it with a machine, I just remember this scene with Scarecrow and Mrs. King is just out there like beating all of her rugs, and Scarecrow, who is a spy by the way, comes out, and he was hiding in the back trying to like talk to her, spies things. So your family can't see him talking with her, but he needs to talk to her, and they have a mission and all this jazz. But she starts beating the carpet like vigorously, and all this dust just flies out. And this man nearly dies from just dust erupting into the air, and it's just really, really funny. But aside from that, I get the picture. Like, I get it. And if you're from a big family, and like I was, the amount of children, my mom would have never had carpets. She just never would have had any carpets. She'd be like, it's not worth it. No carpets are needed. We can do without carpets because the number of children to carpet ratio, there is no way my mother would have ever won had a vacuum not existed with a carpet and the amount of children. But over here we have James M. Spangler, the inventor and the person who made it happen. Pretty cool. I'm most fascinated by his tenacity, that even though he failed so many times, he still continued to innovate. He still continued to do something that made him happy, but probably not the best way to approach, business. Not the best way to go about trying to make something happen. But his inventions and knowing that he also contributed in the agriculture sector is kind of really cool. It's pretty cool. But I wanted to show you this little vacuum over here because it's cute. Look at its face. I would want to buy that. I mean, that's a great marketing. Like, your kids aren't afraid of it, and, mom kind of gets a laugh out of it. So I can understand how they're marketing everything to be, friendly towards, ladies and homemakers. But this ad gets me. That's genius that he stumbled upon that ad, the way that he marketed that you get 10 days free. And if you really hate it, you can return it. But again, you have to think about it that even if they had the most difficult job with these, a person who bought such a machine already had the disposable income. So the upsides and what they would gain with having it, I think far, you know, exceeds any downsides that they would have come up against. Like I said, it was like 40 pounds. 40 pounds. I think nowadays, the ones that we do have are maybe 15 pounds. 15, maybe 10, depending on how lightweight they've made it. But that's crazy how far we've come with the vacuum. But yeah, many of these machines that we have around this time frame that are coming about is just more liberation of women. But then you have to think World War II hit and women had to go to work. So that's what started all of this. World War II started all of this. Women had to go to work because the men were gone. There were not enough people to replace factory workers. And even the telegraph companies and, like you said, with the call girls, them doing the machine, also, those were first done by men. So women had to just go out in the work world and make it happen. And I think the reason why women never went back home or back to the working to being a homemaker full time is simply because of security. I don't think that men and women don't get along really because we don't like each other. I think it's more like women have been told so many times that, hey, having your own money and having your own security and being able to walk away if something goes bad, if the relationship is not the best, I think that's what's spurring women to just work and make their own money. I really do. I think security, I mean, that's what at least was beat into me as a kid. Or like, what my parents told me all the time. Like, you need to have your own finances. You need to have your own things ready to go. As much as I like to see the positive things in everybody, not all relationships work out the best. And not all men or women are great. I think the goal, of any good man and good woman is to try to find the good ones. I think that's what this is about. It's a good people need to come together. And of course, the people who are destructive will continue to be destructive. But that's my theory on why women never went back, is because of that little difference. That once women had an ability to make their own money and have their own freedom, yes, having a husband is awesome if he is a good man. Likely most of us are lucky enough we end up with a good man. Yet same thing too. Women, not saying that they're all angels either. So I think the trick is to find a good man or a good woman. That is the trick. And good luck to you, because that is a very difficult feat. That's what I'm seeming to see here. It's a difficult feat to find a good man or a good woman. William H. Hoover, like we said, for him, he owned a stable, he owned a harness company for horses, but at the time, the car is coming about. Henry Ford is making some changes. So this dude needs to make some changes. So he's like, I need to diversify my portfolio. And he ends up acquiring the Hoover, the patent for it, because, lucky, again, the connections. The cousin of the inventor and then the husband of the cousin. It's so interesting how things work like that. It's about who you know, not what you know sometimes. But I'm kind of a little bit worried, though, that they say, oh, yes, he was working on the whole patent and trying to improve it, and he just died suddenly. They're saying James Spangler. So James Spangler was just working on this, he continued. But also they did say that he has asthma. So maybe he could have just died of natural causes. And again, I don't see any reason to speculate like we did last time. But it's interesting to see how many of these inventions, how many of these machines take off, because you do need the inventor, you need the tinker, you need the person who just keeps trying new things because it's who they are. But you also need a William Hoover who just is a good businessman, strategizes perfectly. Like 10-day trial, if you really hate it, you can return it. How many of us, even Amazon, how many of us have gone on Amazon, bought something and they say you can return it anytime you want. How many of us have just been like, it's not worth it. It's not even worth it to go to the store and try to return it. I don't care that much. I know like a decent amount of us do that, and it's the same logic that Hoover used over here. And it's cool to see how this story kind of worked. It's different than what we're typically used to, because this man probably wouldn't have made it if his cousin didn't step in and really acquire this patent. I'm going to show you some videos before we move on, because I have some stuff for you. Let me see over here. I have some videos over here that I had taken a look at, and I wanted you guys to see this because it's cool. The picture, again, this is like kind of like, I turned off the audio because the audio is really not necessary. You get the idea. Men moving big wheels, big machines, a lot of changes going on. They're working. This machine is huge. They're working on like a cat. Holt, Caterpillar, cat machine. But that's so cool, you guys. And these machines are expensive. Okay, if you want to know where all the rich men are at, all their money is in these machines. Okay, all the construction guys, all the business guys. If you want to know where all their money is at, it's in these machines. These machines are like, oh my gosh, it's insane. I don't know exactly the amount for all of these because that would be nerd territory to the max. But if you do know it, we're going to discuss this a little bit later. So let us know down below how much they are. But for this, easily 100 grand. Easily 100 grand. Easy. It's crazy. But it makes sense. The amount of steel, the amount of pieces that need to go together. And you see that when it does break down, it takes a decent amount of effort to get it together and get a lot of people working on it. But I wanted to show you this one, which is pretty cool. The cat or the caterpillar. And then this one looked cool because of how look what that's doing. What it's able to do. That just gets me. No way. I understand how you guys are addicted to these videos. Men, all of you, I feel this. I feel this. Like, it's so cool to watch these. I get you now. Because these things are pretty cool. Wow. But they're also very hard to take care of. A lot of training that goes into this stuff. But it looks like a very hard job. It really does look like a really hard job. Well, there's operating it, and then there's also kind of like the monotony sometimes. You're just lifting it and putting dirt in one section, lifting it and putting dirt in one section. But these things are so cool. Are they fighting right now? Are they doing a war, or are they trying to pull each other closer to... So he's trying to pull this guy out of the water. Because they do get stuck in mud, and then they'll sink deep sometimes when things don't go perfectly right. The mud or the terrain, whatever they're on, they can sink into it. Because all that weight, if it's not properly adjusted... Wow! That's so cool! Okay, so remove them from the mud. Okay, that's pretty cool. Alrighty. But this is like how high this is, and the way that they also excavate, that it's done strategically. I find all of this fascinating. What is this, like maybe civil engineering? I don't know all of it, but that looks super duper cool. Wow. Oh my gosh. It's like a mini avalanche. It's so satisfying. Okay. I get why this is satisfying. No way. Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. And I like the strategicness of this, because one doesn't really think about it that way. That these guys have to move strategically. And the better they plan this, the easier their jobs are, the safer everyone is, because as you can see, all that is tumbling down, all the dirt is tumbling down, and that would be a yikes, oopsie, if the cat were to get, bogged down underneath all that dirt. Alrighty, I'm gonna show you. You know what? I think this is good for now. This is good for now, and then we're going to. Oh, okay, okay. This one's good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. See, I'm addicted now. I'm addicted to these. I'm addicted to these videos. Wow. Took zero time. Look at this. All right, so how high it is and where it's at. That's fascinating and scary. That's so scary. What? I didn't know that was possible. Are you are you guys joking with me? Is this possible? No. I'm losing it. I am legit losing it. I didn't know that was possible. Let me see. We're going to go back to this. The Holt Caterpillar Combine Harvester. Look at those pictures, you guys. The original. Look how old that is. It's so ancient. I'm just... Wow. I'm so impressed. And again, you have to think, right, back then, a lot of wood. A lot of wood being used compared to what we have today. Alrighty. Let's get into reading mode, and let's get into the Holt Caterpillar Combine Harvester. For most of human history and a good part of prehistory, the principal occupation of the vast majority of the working population was the production of food, principally grains of various kinds, such as wheat and barley in Europe and North America. It is estimated that in 1800, approximately 90% of the U.S. population worked on the land. Until the early part of the 19th century, cereal production depended entirely on the labor of humans and animals. Farmers plowed the land with the help of oxen, mules, and horses, and they reaped their harvest by hand with sieves and threshes, and threshed it using methods that had changed very little in the millennia. The first industrial revolution affected every area of society, and agriculture was no exception. Mechanization began with a reaping machine patented in England in 1799. However, the first major breakthrough in harvesting technology came in 1835, when Hiram Moore designed the first horse-drawn combine harvester. Two countries led the way in the development of agricultural machinery in the late 19th century: Britain, the period's technological superpower, and the United States, with a huge and growing agricultural sector. During the 1880s and 90s, firms on both sides of the Atlantic developed new agricultural machinery, including the Holt brothers, whose company manufactured wooden carriage wheels near San Francisco. The youngest brother, Benjamin Holt, was acknowledged to be the brightest, most able, and most mechanically gifted. In 1886, he designed a link belt machine harvester that used flexible chain belts attached to the wheels to power the machine. And in 1891, he created a combine harvester with self-leveling technology slopes. The drawback was that the new combines were so large that they needed up to 20 horses or mules to draw and power them. The solution was to find an alternative power source, which at the time meant steam. Holt's first steam-powered tractor, built in 1892, was a 24-ton or 22,000-kilogram monster mounted on huge iron wheels. Although slow, it could haul 50 tons or 45,000 kilograms and harvest a field more cheaply than a horse-drawn combine. However, the weight of the tractor means that it was not suitable for softer ground. In 1903, Holt traveled to England to study the latest developments in agricultural technology. He returned to the U.S. and came up with an invention that would shape the future of his company and define a whole new class of machines. The Caterpillar track is still used today in heavy construction and military vehicles. The invention was so important to the firm that in 1911, Holt decided to rename it. the Holt Caterpillar Company, better known as CAT today. The same year, Holt made another breakthrough when he designed the world's first combine harvester, powered entirely by internal combustion. The advances of IC over steam were reduced weight and size and, of course, improved fuel efficiency. The innovations introduced by Holt would vastly reduce the need for agricultural workers who migrated to find jobs in the new industrial cities. Although it was similar to a horse or steam tractor drawn design in its basic operation, the Holt Caterpillar combine harvester was the first to be powered entirely by an internal combustion. The crop entered the machine through the header, located on the side of the machine and not at the front as in modern design. The threshing machine mechanism separated the grain from the stalks. Grain passed through sieves and was stored. When the storage bin was full, it had to be emptied into a trailer with the unloader. The chaff made up the stalks and other waste was removed by straw walkers and dispersed over the ground by a spreader. Wow, there is a lot happening over here. So I was really fascinated by finding out that this man is kind of the person who gave us CAT as we know it today. All these machines that I just showed you, the excavation and the dirt and, tanks, thank the military as well. The military would also begin to get into these machines and use them for their own agenda. But all of this, I never knew that. I really never knew that. And wow, that is all I can say. Wow. But also the horses. You guys, look at this picture. 20 horses. I would count them all, but this picture is a little hard. So it really did take 20 horses to power that. And just like we had talked about that the steam engine, we talked about that last week, steam engine is so inefficient and it wasted more than it produced, honestly. That's how wasteful the steam engine was. So the internal combustion engine, when that came around, remember we talked about diesel as well, and the way that he used the internal combustion system as well as the fuel and how that worked. It saved so much more on energy and use. So the Holt, him bringing us this new type of harvester, he also went to the new type of engine that we're using, or the new technology that we're using to power such machines. And I think, yeah, the efficiency is drastic. The efficiency, of course, would be drastic. But today, us, suburban children, we're not really aware of how these things work. I'm learning about them now because I'm curious and I'm finding about them now. But this looks so fascinating. Benjamin Holt, the youngest and brightest and most gifted of all the children in that area. And this is so cool. This is so basic, but so cool. Basic meaning the design compared to what it is today. I'm aware of how complicated these men and what they do are. And we have the CAT today. We have the design of what we're looking at patented in October 1915. We have the wheel over here. And then, of course, we have a regular one back in the day of what it would have looked like. And it's just so crazy how we go from this to this. That's so cool. And all the all the pieces in there, I wonder how the guys work them out. I really am so curious. We are going to go a little bit over with time because we're having so much fun. I forgot to put 8-ish, because we're having so much fun. We're going to go through the electric drill next, and then we're going to open the floor and we're going to talk about all these things. But I get you. I'm so excited that I'm going over the time. Luckily, we're not timed. We're just here to have fun. So, without much further ado, let's get more reading and let's get into the Black & Decker electric drill. This one is most fascinating. I know that you'd be like, Shalinda, all of these are fascinating. I know. I find all of them to be fascinating. But the world of men. I have entered in this world now. I've always been, curious about technology and always been curious about, things that typical ladies are not into. But coming into this world and learning even more about what men did and how they invented them is just so cool. And it opens my eyes to all the wonderful things that we owe to our forefathers and the men who came before us, and all the genius of men. Like, I'm not privy to it. I don't get to see it on an everyday basis. But looking back in history, it really does showcase the genius of men in all of these machines. It is not only drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico that is hazardous to the nation's health. According to health and safety statistics from all over the developed world, literally thousands of homeowners, DIY enthusiasts, suffer serious and sometimes fatal injuries when using power tools. Top of the list comes a homeowner's trusty companion for almost a century, the power drill. Starting with those who fall off the ladder and followed by those who drill into their own bodies, we come to those who, like this writer, drilled into a service duct that in my case carried the house's electrical supply. Home improvement casualties notwithstanding, the introduction of the first handheld electric drill in the early 20th century began a revolution in construction. It also made a big difference in maintaining and improving the home, and ultimately gave birth to the development of hundreds of domestic versions of industrial machine tools. Hand drills have existed since prehistory, and water and wind powered versions are known from antiquity. The Industrial Evolution witnessed the invention of high precision machine tools for industry, which included large fixed steam power drills. Until the second decade of the 20th century, there were no notable power tools designed for the small tradesman or domestic user. The invention of the first practical electrical motor in 1873 and the provision of a dependable electricity supply in the 1880s created an entirely new market for domestic products powered by a household's main electricity supply, such as the vacuum cleaner. With the American tradition of homeowners building and maintaining their own homes, inexpensive portable power tools represented an amazing commercial opportunity for any company that could get the right design to market. With its versatility and broad applications, the world's first portable power tool was the electric drill. As Duncan Black and his partner Alonzo G. Decker met in 1906, when they were both working at a firm manufacturing printing equipment for the telegraphic industry. Although they were both model employees, there was little hope of promotion in the firm. And in 1910, they decided to set up the Black & Decker Manufacturing Company in Baltimore, Maryland. The two were extremely short on cash, and Black had to sell his most treasured possession, his car, to raise his share of the initial $1,200 stake, with a further $3,000 obtained from backers. If Decker was a technical genius in the partnership, Black, who was a natural-born salesman, was the business brains of the outfit. Initially, B&D made products to order for other companies, but in 1917 they brought to market the first of a long line of B&D products, a portable air compressor. The device sold moderately well, but the company would have gone under had it not been for the release later that year of Decker's design for the first portable electric drill. With its original feature, the B&D drill was an instant worldwide hit, selling in Europe, Australia, and Japan. By the end of the decade, the company had several factories and annual sales in excess of $1 million. Although large and clunky to anyone familiar with today's streamlined plastic cordless drills, for its time, the B&D electric drill was a compact marvel. Decker designed the universal AC-DC motor that turned the chuck at 1,500 RPM. The drill bits were inserted into the chuck and secured with a chuck key as in the modern version. The only control was a trigger on-off switch located on the inside of the pistol grip, which allowed the operator to hold and operate the drill with one hand while using the other to hold the workpiece. Wow, that's pretty cool. Using the other to hold the workpiece. This is so old. But this shows you exactly what I'm describing. Honestly, it looks very much like the picture I have it in the like the book of the original thing. It does indeed look clunky to what we are used to today, but that I imagine back then it was a marvel. It really was, and it looks super duper cool. S. Duncan Black and Alonzo G. Decker. Cool. Hey, you gotta give salesmen their dues. In all of these things, in all of these cool machines that we're learning about, the salesmen are needed. The salesmen are always like, we have to give it to our salesmen and give them the credit that when these new things come about, we need people to come to the market and help sell it and produce it or package it in such a way as to entice, appealing, and not be too scary to the person who's not really used to this new technology. I'm sure there are many different things in life that you can think of. Packaging makes a huge difference. This actually worked out really perfectly. It's 7:51 and at this time the floor is open. What do you guys think of all these ideas? Type them in. They're going to pop up in the blue box over there. And you guys, I'm so happy about this box. Let me tell you, this chat box took so much work with Cullen and I, my editor, my Jamie. If you know Joe Rogan, okay, if you know Joe Rogan, it makes sense, okay? If you don't, well, we're here to roast you. So put something in the chat so we can roast you.